Hello and welcome to another edition of Casey's Corner 3. I am Casey Coggins. I am the host of the Benchwarmers podcast and Casey's Corner 3. And here we are recording another episode. This one is a little different because I've been talking about teams and their future outlook through the season, what I've seen through however far into the season we've played, and I've done all of that. But this one, I wanted to discuss something I thought about last night, or maybe the night before. But recently, I was thinking about how there are great players, but then there are Hall of Fame players who we know are going to be Hall of Fame players. And this stems from more NFL thinking, because Drew Brees broke Peyton Manning's all-time touchdown record. And it just got me thinking, like, how can we make the Hall of Fame appreciate guys more? Now, if you follow the NFL and you've been watching this season, Eli Manning is benched, even though he came back to start the last few games. And so he really stirred up is this guy a Hall of Famer debate? Which I don't think he is. But in the sense that he won 2 Super Bowls, and I believe he was the MVP of both Super Bowls, that right there by itself is a Hall of Fame quality resume. But just him as a regular season quarterback and the rest of his years, other than the Super Bowl years, he was average to below average. He's not special. You would never say he was a top 5 quarterback in the league. So if he makes the Hall of Fame, like, why is he on the same level as Steve Young, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway? Peyton Manning, I think, is going to be inducted soon, but Tom Brady and Drew Brees are both going to be inducted. Eli Manning should not be on the same level. Now, in basketball, you have a little more room for who's a Hall of Famer. Well, they announced the finalists for next year's Hall of Fame class, and the people who highlight the finalists are Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Chris Bosh. And then there are plenty of others that are up there too. You're looking at Sean Marion, Michael Finley, Mark Eaton, Buck Williams. And then you have Chauncey Billups, Mark Jackson, Tim Hardaway, Rip Hamilton, Chris Webber, Ben Wallace, and Marcus Camby. And a lot of those guys, when you hear those names, you could probably make a case that they should be a Hall of Famer. The thing for me is, and here is what I want to get into, is that we need to change how the Hall of Fame works. Why are we waiting 5 years after the guy retires to induct him into the Hall of Fame? We know certain guys are Hall of Fame players when they're playing. We just do. Jason Kidd was a Hall of Fame player. Michael Jordan was a Hall of Fame player. LeBron James right now is a Hall of Fame player. He doesn't need to retire. Why are we waiting to induct him into the Hall of Fame? Like, why do we continuously say he is a future Hall of Famer? Why don't we distinguish active Hall of Famers from retired Hall of Famers. Because to me, if you're an active player inducted into the Hall of Fame, that immediately puts you into a stratosphere that not everybody can get to. While I might think that Chris Webber is a Hall of Fame type player, while I might think that Chauncey Billups or Tracy McGrady deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, they shouldn't get the same recognition in the Hall of Fame as, hell, I'll even say Karl Malone. Like, Tracy McGrady and Karl Malone while they'll be in the Hall of Fame together, you can arguably say that Tracy McGrady wasn't a Hall of Famer until after he retired, when you looked at his entire career after a few years. And if you have to sit back and look at their resume and what they did as a player and all of the things that they could do on the court after they retired, when you could look at Karl Malone and say, all right, this guy is the second all-time leading scorer, played so many minutes, led his team to back-to-back NBA Finals in 97, 98, played for the same team until he decided to go to the Lakers to chase a ring. There's a big difference there. Why are we not separating what the Hall of Famer is? Because in the end, when you're talking about Hall of Fame players, you're talking about the greatest of all time, and I do take this, I do kind of stem my Hall of Fame thoughts from Bill Simmons, who, if you've read the book of basketball, you understand what I'm talking about, because the way that he envisions the Basketball Hall of Fame is in tiers, where tier 4, just because you're a Hall of Famer doesn't mean you're as good of a player as tier 3 is. So this spans multiple sports, because as I started talking about Eli Manning, just because Eli and Peyton have the same number of Super Bowls and they're both Hall of Fame quarterbacks, they are not the same level of quarterback. They are not in the same tier. Which leads me to believe that the best way to do a Hall of Fame is to induct active players. As I mentioned earlier with LeBron, like, he's about to pass Kobe Bryant as the number 3 all-time in minutes. He's going to be the only guy that's in the top 10, I believe, in scoring, in points scored and in assists. The numbers are outlandish. The championships, what he did for the league, all of it. Even if we start considering his high school years and the way he changed the format of how we follow high school basketball, he's a Hall of Famer. Why isn't he inducted tomorrow? I mean, not tomorrow, but like, why are we not inducting these guys that we know are going to be Hall of Famers this year? And it does get into, well, how can we vote on these guys? Well, it's similar to how we vote on retired basketball players, retired football players, retired baseball players. You have whoever gets a Hall of Fame vote on guys. And with active players, you need a higher vote total than the others. So if in baseball, I believe it's 75% of the vote. If you get 75% of the vote, you're a Hall of Famer. But if you're active, let's say Mike Trout next year gets put onto a ballot of all active players. Mike Trout's a Hall of Famer. He might not have a World Series ring or any of the playoff success, but we have to realize that that's not because of him. The numbers that he puts up for that team keeps them relevant. Mike Trout could easily be voted next year to be a Hall of Famer. And the reason why I bring up the percentages is if you're going to be an active player inducted into the Hall of Fame, that means almost everybody agrees that you will end up being in the Hall of Fame. So, I mentioned the 2020 finalists. Kobe Bryant. When he was playing back in 2013, when he had the torn Achilles and he was having the injury issues and all of that, was there a doubt in anybody's mind that he was going to be a Hall of Famer? No. If there was, then those people should have their vote revoked, because while I dislike the Lakers and while I dislike Kobe Bryant, I can 100% agree with him being in the Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Famer. And so in 2013, 2014, we could have probably got to a 90% approval rating of him being in the Hall of Fame. Same year, same thing, Tim Duncan. Same year, same thing, Dirk Nowitzki. Same year, same thing, Kevin Garnett. It can go back to Shaq. It can go to a bunch of different guys. And then you start kind of splitting weeds. Is Tony Parker a Hall of Famer while he was playing? Well, if you were going like 2009, probably not, even though he had 3 titles. But after 2014, in all of the success he had with France, yeah, he's probably a Hall of Famer. So you have to really figure out what year is the best to induct a Hall of Fame player, in what necessarily goes into it all. But the people who are voting for the Hall of Fame, they know, all right, this guy for 12 years was a top 5 player in the league. He had this much success. He did all of this stuff. Right now, if the Hall of Fame voters were trying to figure out what active players are Hall of Famers, and they come down to, all right, is Anthony Davis a Hall of Famer? As much as I think he will end up a Hall of Fame player, at this moment in his career, I can't put him in there. As great of a player as he is, he's not a Hall of Famer. Carmelo is more of a Hall of Famer than Anthony Davis. Does that mean Anthony Davis isn't the same level of player, if not better? No, it does not mean the same thing. But Carmelo had the career. He had the international career. He had the impact on the game that Anthony Davis just hasn't yet. 5 years from now, hell, if the Lakers win the championship this year, with the way that they're going, I could easily say after this year, Anthony Davis is a Hall of Famer. But we have to figure out what year, what they need to do to become a Hall of Famer. But I just think that we do need to distinguish the greatness of a Hall of Famer by allowing active players to be voted in. And with that, I have wrapped up my talking point of active players should be voted into the Hall of Fame to distinguish themselves from other Hall of Famers. I will be recording another episode soon. We are taking a break from the Benchwarmers podcast itself until the new year, so be on the lookout for that. If I don't record by the time, never mind. I'm not even going to say it because I will record. I'll probably record tomorrow night, and I'll get back to the regularly scheduled programming of me talking about a team, their success, and what I see from them. And as always, I'm Casey Coggins. Thank you for joining me for Casey's Corner 3. I appreciate all those who have listened, liked, subscribed, rated, reviewed, and I'll see you next time.